And thanks for joining. We are recording today's session so we can share this broadly with folks that couldn't make it today. But again, thank you all for taking the time today to join us. So again, welcome everyone. My name's Nicholas Cohen. I'm the Executive Director of Maryland Citizens for the Arts. Today, the agenda is going to be pretty straightforward. I'll do an advocacy report update. We're going to look at the current budget proposal for 2024, fiscal year 2024, and then we'll also do a recap so we can all remember what happened last year. I'll go a little bit into the arts relief request fund that we're doing, give you all some talking points and some action, so some take-home homework potentially, and then of course talk about Maryland Arts Day. I will leave some time at the end for questions. So please, if you could, as I'm talking, if you could sort of jot down some questions you might have and hold that till the end. And you can drop it in the chat as well, and I'll try and get to as much as possible. Okay, so a brief recap of fiscal year 2023. So last year's session, and of course the current fiscal year that we're in right now. Our work, we were able to get $20.8 million for the Maryland State Arts Council budget, which is a great amount. I know the has been invested incredibly well by the Arts Council folks. And of course, the big win that we got last year was the $40 million in pandemic relief funds. This was one of the largest sort of single relief pots for any industry in the state. Outside of like the bigger, obviously, education pools and healthcare pools, this is something we really were successful in doing. And I did want to thank, I think Stephen's on the call, but in general, I wanted to thank the entire State Arts Council, the Department of Commerce, the counselors and the staff, of course, we were able to advocate for this money and get it. And of course, thanks to the Arts Council, they're able to send it out to all of us. And I think they've really done an incredible job of using this investment across the arts sector. So I know many of us that get grants for organization grants on this call have received a sort of an extra piece of an extra grant over and above their GFO amount. From what I'm hearing, they're all really strong investments for every group. And of course, they've also done this investment across their different programs. I know they launched a Grants for Artists program, giving the opportunity for independent artists to get $6,000 in grant monies to go to anything they want, which again is an incredible program. And I'm hearing it's very popular. So that's great news. That also means that we have more work to do. So, the fiscal year 2024 budget proposal. So the things we always look for, especially when a new administration comes on, is that there's a lot that happens very fast. So as we all know, we have a new governor, Wes Moore. He was elected in November, and then a budget proposal was made in mid-January. So there's a really small window between the former governor, Governor Hogan, transitioning out of his office in mid-January, the new governor, Governor Wes Moore, getting sworn in a few days later, and then a budget comes out 2 days after the inauguration. So it's one of those things where, we have to be hyper aware that we're not overlooked. And of course, luckily the State Arts Council's budget is governed and mandated by a few different bills. So in that sense, we're not like, we sort of know we're not starting from zero every fiscal year. We know there's some laws that make sure that we're going to have some sort of funding, but that we still have to make sure we're priorities. And so luckily, Governor Wes Moore in his budget proposal, in the operating budget, he did put $30.5 million in for the State Arts Council, which is basically a $2 million increase from fiscal year 23. That's the number we were expecting. That's great. It's a great increase. We're now in the $30 million category, which is amazing. That includes the special fund, the preservation of cultural arts, the special fund, as I've talked about a lot, at $1 million. Again, that's what we expected. It also includes that number includes federal money from the National Endowment for the Arts. Kind of a side note to that, a lot of arts advocates have been working at the federal level, MCA included, to make sure that the NEA has been growing. And so actually, we're starting to see that. The federal funds, I think, for the State Arts Council specifically have gone up a few $100,000, which is great. I mean, it's a starting point. The NEA is still, you could say, grossly underfunded, but we're getting there. We're getting better. So that's also a positive piece. I did want to mention, so with the operating budget, we have hearings on this. So the Commerce Department, which the State Arts Council is part of, has to go in front of the House and the Senate in Annapolis and provide testimony on their budget, on the budget that's been proposed. And so there's two subcommittees in the House and the Senate that will hear this. They're in Annapolis on the 22nd of February in the House and the 27th in the Senate. This is all available online, and through social media, we'll share the videos. And so you can see, I will be there providing testimony. The Arts Council, through the new Secretary of Commerce, will have testimony they'll provide. And then there'll also be a panel that Maryland Citizens puts together, again, in support of these numbers. So again, keep a lookout on our social media around the hearings. So new this year, for those that are sort of like have been in this advocacy realm and like come to these budget webinars a lot, I really don't talk about the capital budget much. I mean, I know different arts organizations get capital money, but this is going to be the first time ever that the arts now have a piece of the pie. And just to explain this, as I mentioned, to go back to the slide, this says, so the state of Maryland has two separate budgets: a general operating budget, that's where the State Arts Council gets their main pool of money. And then the state also has a separate capital budget. So monies that go towards facade building improvements, HVAC upgrades, things like that. And many of you will recall over what seems like many years, but really the past 4 years, since about 2019, Maryland Citizens has worked to create the Arts and Culture Capital Grant Program. That comes from, we heard from all of you and many of arts groups, smaller arts groups particularly, that getting access to capital dollars from the state is quite challenging. So for those that don't know, this Arts and Capital Grant Program is a program that will be administered by the Maryland State Arts Council, and it is separate from operating. It is basically for arts organizations and county arts councils to request capital money. And again, this is one of those things where this finally is the year that it starts. Many of you have probably been aware the State Arts Council is looking to hire a position to oversee this program. The legislation that we passed asked for $3 million in the governor's budget. Governor Moore has actually put this in his budget. I do want to say this is really a huge win. The Moore administration really took a fine-tooth comb to capital monies. From what I've heard and been told, there were a lot of capital sort of line items from the previous administration that were taken out. And a lot of that is because the Moore administration wants to democratize this piece. So what this means to us, and as I look at this, is that the Moore administration believes that this program is in fact the democratization, at least for our field. And that was the whole point. We wanted to do this. We needed to do this. So really excited. It's funded at $3 million. And so just so we all know, what that means is the Arts Council technically has a $33.5 million budget total, but it's separate. You have to think of $30.5 million that they use as operating, and then this $3 million is a pool just for capital improvement projects and things like that. But it's nice to see that kind of growth. Now, with now working in the capital realm, we also have more hearings. So these hearings will again be the Commerce Department, but now they'll be speaking directly about capital monies. So it's great. We also get even more awareness from a whole different committees in the Senate and House around the State Arts Council, and now it's going to bring more awareness that we have a capital grant program. I do want to mention, because we heard from so many advocates, it has grown. It's, as you can see, it's arts and culture. So there's going to be, and as the State Arts Council builds this program out, it's a little more of a wider net. We wanted to be as inclusive as we could for the sector. I think arts and culture are two pieces that fit really well together. So it is going to be a little more broader than just arts. And hopefully the idea is as this program gets started, it's technically a 5-year program right now, funded at $3 million each year. And so 5 years from now, it will sunset, at least the legislation's written like that. But we'll work to see how popular this program is. And hopefully we're going to see it's incredibly popular. And not only then we will extend it, but we'll hopefully add to it because we can show the need for it. And again, since the democratization of this it is in line with the current administration's want for capital. Okay, another bill that we're working on, and again, for those that have been in this for a while, this might seem like we're kind of sort of, I don't know, doing this again and again and again, which we are. But so what we're working on for a Senate Bill 167, we're still working on a House bill, so that's why it's TBD. But we're trying to codify the Maryland State Arts Council's annual funding formula. So the way this works is the Arts Council has basically two mandates that govern its funding formula. The first is a law that was established in 1994. It's kind of one of the most famous, honestly, nationally, kind of arts funding formulas. It basically states that the growth of the Maryland State Arts Council is based on the percentage growth of the state's budget. So year in and year out, what that looks like, what percentage that is, you take the base State Arts Council budget from 1 year, multiply it by the increase percentage, and then you get next year's formula, next year's amount, which is it's great. And also if there's negative growth rates, you cannot decrease the State Arts Council's fund. So that's a really great law. The second one includes POCA, which is the Preservation of Cultural Arts. This is a bill that codified that, so for those that don't know, Preservation of Cultural Arts is a $2 million pot that allows for monies to be supported to the arts, but this specifically moves $1 million of that to the Arts Council every year. And we've had a bill like this in multiple years to both codify it, to make sure the money goes to the Arts Council, and then for this actually was this way it was coming to the Arts Council was going to sunset in 2022, and we had another bill that extended it indefinitely. The current issue is there are different interpretations of how the 1994 and the POCA bills come together to calculate the final fund for the State Arts Council each year. So if you're still with me, we're almost there. So to make sense of this, MCA believes every year the State Arts Council budget should be this kind of equation. The State Arts Council's current fiscal year budget number, appropriation number, plus $1 million from POCA, multiplied by the percentage increase of the state's budget. Whatever that number is, that formula equals X. Whatever X is, that's the number we believe should be the next year's fiscal year number for the State Arts Council. And the legislature agrees with that, the legislature, but the former administration, Governor Hogan and his Department of Budget and Management did not. They believed that you would do, instead of leaving X alone, that number, you would take X and minus that by $1 million. They're saying, and the reason why is they say we take out the POCA money to say this is the number. It's kind of a strange interpretation, but unfortunately, that with legislation, it can be there's gray areas. So this bill removes any gray area and says exactly what it's supposed to be, which is the formula that I said. It's very clear. It's like, it must be this, full stop. And so what's great about this bill is once it gets passed, it'll provide a cumulative difference of 10 million in funds to the Arts Council over the next 5 years, 5 fiscal years. And what that means is by fiscal year 2028, the Arts Council's budget will be around 37 or even 38, depending on the state's budget increases, percentage increases, 37 or 38 million in the next 5 years, which is a great number. So again, this is a really important bill, and it's basically codifying what the General Assembly always has said it should be, and should hopefully not be difficult to pass. Okay, so I mentioned the arts sector relief and recovery fund. Last year, we all remember we got $40 million, and last year we had a humongous budget surplus that was a lot easier to access. And I mean that, so this year, if you're all following the state budget, there's another budget surplus, but it's already been much of it has already been accounted for. Whether it's the Moore administration's priorities, some of it has to go to the blueprint for education, which of course is a critical piece, and other places too. And so what I'm being told is of the sort of few billions in surplus that we have this year, about 400 to 500 million is left. Whereas last year we were looking at probably 2 billion with a B available. So, last year we asked for 40 to 50 million. This year, we know it's our recovery for the art sector. We're still in recovery mode, many of us. We understand that. We know recent inflation and cost increases have strained the arts economy too. We're all sort of on eggshells to see if we're going to enter a recession. And I think those are very real concerns. We know they're very real concerns, and we're working with the legislature so they understand that. So our ask this year is less, but it has to be because of what I mentioned with what's left in the surplus. So we are asking again for a dip of about 20 million. But I do want to say, whereas last year I felt I would say 80% positivity as far as we were going to get something. This year it's much lower. I would say it's 30, 40% likely that we're going to get something extra. And to say that we're going to get 20 is probably not going to happen. It might look more 10, 15. And if we do get it, it's going to be really incredible. Because like I said, there's a lot of needs and not a lot of money left. But we want to do it. We want to make sure that at the very least, the General Assembly knows that we're still not out of the woods yet. So what do our talking points look like? So for the General Assembly session, again, and if for those that are coming to Maryland Arts Day, you'll hear this again. The first one is please support fully funding the State Arts Council at the fully mandated level of 30.5 million. As I mentioned, that's the general operating for the Arts Council. The second is please support fully funding the Arts and Capital grant program at $3 million from the capital budget. So recall that's again from a different budget to make sure that our lawmakers keep that in the capital budget. And then please vote yes on Senate Bill 167. And when we have a House bill, we'll put that in there as well, which codifies the State Arts Council funding formula. And finally, please support $20 million for arts and recovery funding. So all these talking points will be shared across many different avenues. And really, this is where it's important. This is where all you come in and where all your connections come in. This is how Maryland citizens ultimately is successful. As you all know, I'm a registered lobbyist on behalf of all of you in the arts sector. I do, 3 to 4 days a week in Annapolis doing direct lobbying, which is great. But it's more than that. It's you all emailing and talking to your lawmakers as well. It's almost like when they see me, a lawmaker, they know I have thousands of you behind me. It's not just my face. They see hundreds of emails and calls and just all of you supporting what we're asking for. So it's really helpful when you're engaged with us. So for instance, many of you have probably done some of our action alerts that we send out every session, that you can email your lawmakers through these alerts that we do, or you can call them, which is also pretty cool. All that stuff, if you don't get to a lawmaker, it's okay. It gets to their legislative aides. That all gets back to them. they have to tell a lawmaker how many emails they're getting on an issue, how many phone calls. You can also, feel free if you feel you want to come down to Annapolis, feel free to do that. You can email me, let me know. I can help you set up meetings. We can go together. Of course, I do a lot of this too. I try and get advocates down there as well. But these alerts should be finalized around Maryland Arts Day. We'll share them at that event. We'll share them broadly through email and social media. The letter to sign on to the ask, so the $20 million ask that I mentioned, the way we do this is it's sort of outside of no one's proposing this, right? It's not in the governor's budget. It's not in a budget. The $20 million doesn't exist right now. So the way we have to do this is MCA will craft a letter. I will then share it widely with the arts sector, organizations, and county arts councils primarily, just because that's typically how this is done, to show kind of like organizational support. I will share that around and ask that people sign on to it by, agreeing to the letter and then sending me their signature and, if applicable, their organization logo. The reason why we're waiting to do this is even talking about the 20 million or those kinds of asks, that's going to come out of a supplemental budget discussion, which won't really take place until March. So we don't want to do this too early and then have them forget. So we're kind of waiting in the weeds a bit to pop this out. So again, look for this to be sent around. And of course, additional updates will be posted, emailed out where appropriate. So please make sure that you look out. And what I want to do really quick, in the chat, I'm going to drop if you're not part of our advocacy sort of mailing list, this will ensure that you are. Just click on that, you can sign up. I think many of you probably get our emails, so you're probably on there, but if you know other people that aren't, you can share that link. And of course, most importantly, we have Maryland Arts Day. It is virtual again. Just really quick, if you're asking yourself, Nicholas, why are we doing this virtual again? Can't we go down there in person? So yes, technically the Annapolis is open. It's back to sort of the pre-pandemic quote unquote normals, but there's so many different things going on down there construction wise. So that those have been to Maryland Arts Day, where we used to host the morning section on St. John's College campus. That is under construction, that whole theater. So that's not available. And then when we used to have delegation rooms, those are all now being used as office space for the Department of Legislative Services, because the Department of Legislative Services building has been raised to be rebuilt. Originally, they were planning on, or from what I understood, is there might have been they were thinking about other options than taking up all those office spaces and delegation rooms, but that's where we are. So that means there's really no space to operate Maryland Arts Day as it was, but we are working. So hopefully in 2024, we'll have a reimagined Maryland Arts Day where people can go down there. But I do recommend, if those that are really interested in going down, reach out to me. We can schedule some meetings. It'll be different, but still effective. But virtual Maryland Arts Day is also really effective. We've done this for 2 years now. Lawmakers are excited to come. A lot of them find it easier, honestly, because they just sign on, they hear from you. It's still really great. It's Thursday, February 16th. All right, let me drop the Arts Day registration. It is also free. We benefit from the Arts Council's investment. We get a grant. We got a pandemic relief grant from that kind of stuff. We wanted to give that back to all of you to make an event like this free, because we can. Our budget allows for it. And so, we want you all to benefit more than, that's how Maryland Citizens benefits, when everybody comes to this event and we make it as accessible as possible. So please register, share with your friends. Let's make sure we have tons of people. We're going to have some great speakers. Our keynote speaker is Mackie Villegas from Baltimore Creative Action Network. She is an incredible advocate for independent artists, for creatives, the creative economy, and she just does advocacy at every level. Great. She's going to be a great keynote speaker. We're going to have some great lawmakers speaking, the Senate President Ferguson, Speaker Adrian Jones, the Comptroller, The new comptroller, Brooke Learman, is going to speak. She's a huge art supporter, and she wanted to speak at Maryland Arts Day. Many of us might remember was a delegate. She used to speak, and she wants to continue that. We're also working on some other folks to show up, so we're going to have some great speakers. We'll also do the Sue Hess Arts Advocate of the Year Award, which is still open from nominations. Check that out. Please consider nominating someone if you haven't done so yet. And then we'll also do the budget briefing that myself and Marva Jo Kemp, who's a board member, and our vice chair will lead. And then you'll all go to your delegation rooms and use the talking points I mentioned to advocate for what we need. So with that, I am going to stop talking because I just said a lot. And I would love to hear questions. And I shared my contact. If you don't have it, please feel free to email me to share that if you have any questions, or if you didn't think of something right now, I'm happy to answer them later on. So I will stop the screen share and see again any general questions. I know I said a lot, so any question's a good one. Oh, I think someone wanted I'll share the screen again. Someone wanted the talking points. One sec. Other questions? Everyone's so quiet. I said so much. I can't have covered everything, but I'm glad. Again, I see, Stephen, it's great to see. When I see that, so Stephen in the chat mentioned that they've received over almost 1,200 applications from the artist grant program. That kind of knowledge is so great for us to hear, because that's when I go down and tell lawmakers that we need more investment, and they say, why? I just say that. I say there's 1,200 applications for this, so it just describes it. There's a lot of need. And again, it's really a kudos to the Arts Council staff of imagining a program like that again invests in artists, not for programming, but literally for need. I call it universal basic income, because to me that's what it is. It's giving artists that sort of baseline need and investment. So it's a brilliant program, and MCA and all of us, I hope, are really we're going to support that and help that grow. Someone asked, so someone about arts and culture. So I will say that in the legislation for the Arts and Culture Capital Program, it's very open. It's thinking it's kind of it's a little broad, and what I'll say, it's actually left to the Arts Council to determine. And I say that I'm not trying to avoid being specific, but it's basically when we do legislation, we try and make it broad on purpose so that the government agency that we really trust, the State Arts Council, will do their due diligence, which is they host listening sessions and things like that to build out a program, of course, with parameters. So for instance, this program also is only for organizations under 3 million. There's different things built in, so it's used correctly. So it gives the framework to the Arts Council, and then they determine from that framework how it's properly built. And Stephen, if you had anything else you wanted to add to that, you can feel free, but no pressure.
Thanks, Nicholas. Not much to add. At this point, we're in the hiring process, and as you said, we have some leeway there to build a program that meets the needs of the arts and culture sector. We plan to include public input into the program building, so please be on the lookout for information about that in our newsletters, and please participate so that we can make sure that the needs of the sector are reflected in the program that results.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, that's exactly what Stephen just said, is exactly why we leave legislation broad, because State Arts Council are the experts on getting that community input. And we do not want to do that in the legislative process, because if we put too many words in a bill, then we run into issues, and then it's like they're stuck. So it's purposefully done like that because we want to make this as broad and as accessible and equitable as possible. So, all right. Well, I think I've heard, or from the judging by the quiet, that you all have we all have our marching orders, so we know. Please be on the lookout for more information from us, action alerts, signing on to letters. Make sure you register for Maryland Arts Day. Start talking to your lawmakers if you have those relationships. You can use those talking points I mentioned. You can always share my email with lawmakers. If you run into them, that if you in your district, they're shopping at wherever they shop, go up to them, say, hey, like seriously, do that. If you want to go down to Annapolis, reach out to me. We can set up some meetings. And if anything else, I look forward to seeing you all at Maryland Arts Day. Thank you all so much for your incredible support. And one more time, let's all continue to thank the Maryland State Arts Council for their great work. And from that, I will bid you all a good day and see you in a few weeks. Thank you all. Have a good one.